The mall was packed. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon in the city of Bogota. The year was 1990. Tomorrow was Mother's Day. Families were everywhere. Children ran past store windows. Men carried brightly wrapped boxes. Women laughed over coffee at small tables. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. Outside, the streets were crowded with heavy weekend traffic. It felt like a perfectly normal day, a safe day, a day for celebration. Then, a dark car pulled up to the curb. It stopped right near the busy glass entrance of the shopping center. The driver turned off the engine. He did not look at the happy people walking by. He kept his eyes down. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. He opened the door, stepped out, and walked away fast. He did not run. He just melted into the thick crowd. Inside the trunk of that car was a monster. Over 200 pounds of high explosives. A mother held her little girl's hand near the doors. A father checked his watch. People smiled. The sun was shining. Then the world turned white. A massive fireball ripped through the concrete. Thick glass shattered into a million invisible knives. The ground shook like a violent earthquake. Screams replaced the soft music. Heavy black smoke swallowed the light. The joy of Mother's Day was instantly turned into a nightmare of blood and ash. How did a day of love become a day of slaughter? Who would do this to innocent families? But this didn't start here. To understand this pure evil, we have to rewind. We have to look at the man who ordered it, Pablo Escobar. By the spring of 1990, Pablo was the most famous criminal on earth. He was the head of the Medellín Cartel. He had billions of dollars. He had private planes. He had huge ranches. He had an army of killers waiting for his orders. But all his money could not buy the one thing he really wanted: peace. The Colombian government was hunting him. The United States government was hunting him. The pressure was intense. The walls were closing in on his empire. Pablo had a simple rule for doing business: silver or lead. You take his money or you take his bullet. For years, he used this rule on police officers. He used it on judges. He used it on politicians. He killed anyone who stood in his way. Fear was his favorite tool. But the government stopped playing his game. They refused to surrender. They signed a law allowing extradition. Extradition meant Pablo could be sent to a prison in the United States, a cold, hard cell where his money meant nothing. He could not bribe a U.S. guard. He could not escape a U.S. prison. He knew this could destroy everything. Extradition was his absolute biggest fear. It kept him awake at night. His ego could not accept it. He felt trapped. And when a powerful predator feels trapped, it becomes completely ruthless. Pablo decided to change his strategy. Killing politicians was not working fast enough. Killing police was not working fast enough. The government was still fighting. The president was still pushing for his capture. Before we go deeper, make sure you're subscribed. We post stories like this every single day. Pablo needed a new kind of weapon. He needed something that would break the heart of the whole country. He realized that the politicians and the rich elites felt safe. They lived in nice neighborhoods. They shopped in nice malls. They thought the drug war belonged only to the poor streets and the police stations. Pablo decided to bring the war to their front door. He wanted to create a level of chaos that nobody could ignore. He wanted the people to be so terrified that they would beg the government to make a deal with him. He wanted to break the spirit of Colombia. But that was only the beginning. He called his top lieutenants to a secret meeting. He told them the new plan. No more targeted assassinations. No more rules of engagement. They were going to start using massive car bombs, and they were going to put them in the busiest, most crowded places they could find. Some of his men hesitated. They were hardened killers. They usually killed rival gang members or cops. Now, the boss was asking them to blow up women and children. It was a line that even criminals rarely crossed. But greed and fear are powerful things. Pablo paid very well, and if you said no to Pablo, you did not live to see tomorrow. Betrayal meant instant death. The men nodded. They agreed to the plan. There was no way back now. They chose Bogotá, the capital city, the center of wealth and power. They needed a day when the maximum number of people would be out, a day when families gathered together, a day of celebration and joy. They chose Mother's Day weekend. It was a dark, twisted calculation. Pablo knew that an attack on Mother's Day would dominate the global news. It would prove that he was everywhere. It would prove that the government could not protect anyone, not even mothers, buying gifts with their children. His ego drove him to cross a line that no drug lord had ever crossed before. He was no longer just a cartel boss. He was a domestic terrorist. The risk was huge. The whole world would turn against him, but he did not care. He wanted power at any cost. The preparations began quietly. In a hidden, dirty garage on the edge of the city, his men went to work. They bought a stolen car. It was a normal, boring car that nobody would notice. They parked it in the dark garage. They closed the heavy metal doors. Explosives experts were brought in. These men were paid thousands of dollars for a few hours of work. They carefully loaded the trunk. Dynamite, C4 explosives, heavy metal shrapnel. They packed it all tightly to cause the maximum amount of damage. The men sweating in that garage knew exactly what this bomb was going to do. They knew it was going to a shopping district. They knew who would be there. But they turned off their emotions. They focused on the money. The cartel paid in stacks of crisp cash. Greed blinded them to the horror they were building. What happened next shocked everyone. The bomb was wired to a simple, cheap timer. The driver just had to flip a switch, then he had to walk away and disappear. It was a suicide mission, but without the suicide. If he was fast enough, he would live. If he was slow, he would burn. The night before the attack, the chosen driver sat in a cheap hotel room. He smoked cigarette after cigarette. His hands shook violently. He was a young man from the slums of Medellín. He was used to street violence, but this was different. He was going to carry a slaughterhouse in the trunk of his car. The pressure was enormous. It was crushing him. If he failed the mission, Pablo's men would kill his entire family. They knew where his mother lived. They knew where his sister went to school. If he succeeded, he would be rich. He felt trapped in a nightmare of his own making. The sun came up on Saturday, May 12, 1990, the day before Mother's Day. The weather was absolutely perfect. Blue skies, a warm, gentle breeze. The people of Bogotá woke up smiling. They drank coffee. They made plans for dinner. They had no idea that a dark car was rolling out of a hidden garage. They had no idea it was carrying death toward them. The driver navigated the heavy Saturday traffic. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Every time he hit a small bump in the road, his breath caught in his throat. He was driving a bomb, a very unstable bomb. He drove into the northern part of the city, the wealthy part. The streets were clean. They were lined with green trees. There were expensive boutiques and busy shopping malls. People were dressed nicely. He spotted his target, the Quirigua shopping center. The cartel had planned multiple hits to paralyze the city, but the shopping centers were the main prizes. They were the places where the psychological damage would be the deepest. The driver pulled up. The sidewalks were packed tight with people. Shoppers bumped into each other. They carried bright, colorful shopping bags. Children were laughing. They were holding shiny balloons. A street vendor was selling hot food from a cart. It was a picture of perfect, normal life. The driver felt a cold sweat run down his back. He looked at the families through his windshield. For a split second, human morality fought against cartel greed. He knew what was about to happen. He knew the smiling faces outside his window were about to disappear forever. He hesitated. His hand hovered over the switch. But the fear of Pablo Escobar was stronger than his conscience. He pictured his own family. He pictured the cartel hitmen waiting for his call. He knew he had to do it. He pulled the car hard to the curb. He parked it illegally, right in front of the stores. He left the engine running. He reached under the dashboard. His fingers found the cold, heavy metal switch. He took a deep breath. He flipped the switch. The timer started ticking. He opened the door and stepped out. The bright sunlight hit his face. He kept his head down. He walked away fast. He did not run. Running would draw attention from the police. He just mixed into the crowd of happy shoppers. He walked away from the car as fast as his legs could carry him. He walked 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. He turned a corner and faded away. Behind him, the dark car sat quietly by the glass doors of the mall. Inside the stores, mothers were picking out new clothes. Fathers were buying jewelry for their wives. Soft pop music was playing over the speakers. The clock ticked down in the dark trunk. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. A mall security guard noticed the parked car. It was in a bad spot. He frowned. He pulled out his notepad. He was going to write a simple parking ticket. He never made it. The detonation was deafening. It was not just a loud noise. It was a massive physical force. It punched the air right out of the city. The car vanished in a blinding flash of pure white and bright orange. The blast wave ripped outward at supersonic speed. It pushed a wall of intense burning heat ahead of it. It hit the glass walls of the mall. The thick glass didn't just break, it turned into thousands of deadly flying blades. The blast tore through the front of the stores. It ripped metal frames and heavy concrete blocks like they were made of cheap paper. People were thrown violently through the air. The street vendors simply disappeared. The children with balloons were caught in the sudden fire. Everything in the blast radius was destroyed in less than a second.
The terrible sound echoed across the entire city of Bogotá. A thick, dark black mushroom cloud rose into the beautiful blue sky. It cast a dark shadow over the northern neighborhoods. Then came the silence. A terrible, heavy, ringing silence that lasted for only a few seconds. Dust rained down like gray snow. And then the screaming started. It was chaos, pure, terrifying chaos. People were wandering out of the thick smoke. They were covered in gray ash and dark red blood. Some were missing limbs. Some were carrying their injured children. They were crying out for help. They were looking for their loved ones in the ruins. The street looked like a war zone. Cars were flipped completely upside down. They were burning brightly. The entire front of the mall was completely gone. The air smelled of burnt rubber, raw explosives, and death. Sirens began to wail loudly in the distance. Ambulances and heavy fire trucks raced toward the black smoke. Police officers arrived with their guns drawn. They were ready for a fight. But there was no one to shoot. The enemy was already gone. The damage was done. And that's when everything changed. Over 20 innocent people were dead. Hundreds more were severely injured. Many of the victims were mothers and young children. The hospitals of Bogotá were completely overwhelmed within minutes. Doctors and nurses worked non-stop through the night. They operated on innocent people who had just gone out to buy a simple Mother's Day gift. When the horrible news broke, the entire nation stopped. Television screens showed the burning ruins of the mall. They showed the bloody shoes of children left on the broken sidewalk. They showed crying families outside the hospitals. The country wept. The pain was unbearable. Pablo Escobar sat in his hidden jungle camp. He watched the news on a small television. He saw the crying faces. He saw the blood. He smiled. He believed he had won.
His massive ego told him that the government would now surrender. He thought the rich elites would call the president immediately. He thought they would demand an end to the extradition war. He thought they would give him whatever he wanted just to make the bombs stop. He thought fear would finally conquer Colombia. But he had no idea what was coming. He had made a massive, fatal miscalculation. Instead of breaking the strong spirit of the nation, he accidentally united it. The Mother's Day massacre was a heavy line in the sand. Before this bomb, some people still thought of Pablo as a businessman. Some people in the slums still bought his Robin Hood lies. They thought he was on their side. But after the shopping mall bomb, the mask was completely gone. Everyone saw the true monster. The rich, the middle class, and the poor all realized one simple thing. Nobody was safe as long as Pablo Escobar was alive. He did not care about the people. He only cared about his own power. The government did not surrender. They did not back down. They doubled down. The president went on national television. He looked into the camera. He promised to hunt Pablo to the ends of the earth. He promised there would be no peace until the cartel was destroyed. The United States sent more agents. They sent more money. They sent more advanced tracking technology. The world turned entirely against the Medellín Cartel. The search block, an elite Colombian police unit, was given one single mission: find Pablo Escobar and kill him. They were given unlimited resources to do it. The cartel boss had tried to use extreme terror to force a peace deal. Instead, he signed his own death warrant. His actions sealed his fate. His powerful allies began to abandon him. Other violent drug lords were disgusted by the killing of innocent children. They realized Pablo was out of control. They turned against him. They formed a shadow group called Los Pepes. They started hunting Pablo's men. They used the exact same brutal tactics. They burned Pablo's properties. They killed his lawyers. They killed his bankers.
Pablo's vast world began to shrink rapidly. The man who once controlled a city of millions was forced to hide. He moved from tiny dark room to tiny dark room. He slept with a gun in his hand. He could not see his beloved family. He could not spend his billions of dollars. His deep paranoia grew every single day. He trusted absolutely no one. Every time he heard a car engine, he thought it was the police. Every time the phone rang, he thought it was a betrayal. The heavy pressure crushed him day by day. He lived in constant, agonizing fear.
The car bomb at the shopping mall was meant to be his greatest display of ultimate power. Instead, it was the strict beginning of his end. It was the moment he lost the war. It took a few more years of brutal, bloody conflict on the streets, but eventually the search block cornered him. Pablo Escobar died on a dirty, broken rooftop in Medellín. He was barefoot. He was alone. He was shot down like a common street thief. His endless money could not save him. His massive ego could not protect him. He died in the dirt. The families of the innocent victims from the Mother's Day massacre never got their loved ones back. The empty chairs at their dinner tables stayed empty forever. The deep scars on the city of Bogotá eventually healed, but the memory of that dark Saturday never faded away. The country never forgot what he did. The story of the Mother's Day massacre is a chilling, dark reminder. It shows us exactly what happens when unchecked greed and massive ego completely replace human decency. It shows us that fear is a very powerful weapon, but it is also a blind one. When a man decides to burn the world around him, he eventually burns himself in the fire. The bomb shattered the glass of a shopping mall, but it could not break the strong courage of a nation that finally stood up to pure, unstoppable evil. In the end, power always comes with a price. If you liked this video, make sure you subscribe and follow the channel. We upload new videos every single day. And trust me, the next story is even more intense, more surprising, and something you definitely don't want to miss. I'll see you in the next one.